Very good morning, it's Penuel the Black Pen. Today's video is sponsored by two very close friends of mine. The first one being Unonhlanhla Manganyi, who runs Kushinda Caterers. Kushinda Caterers actually does catering largely for the film and TV industry, but they also do private corporate events as well. So if you'd like to contact them, I'm going to drop their website at the bottom. They've got an Instagram page, or you can just hit me up and I can speak to Unonhlanhla and you can see if we can cater for your event, if you're hosting something at home, if you're doing something for your family, or if you want to hire them for your company. I think that would be pretty great. So Nonhlanhla Manganyi Kushinda Caterers. The second one is another good friend of mine, Usfiso Madondo, who does property construction, and he can do construction at all scales under his company Gungubele Property Group. You can contact me in particular to speak to Usfiso. If you're looking to build a back room in your home, if you're looking to build a house, if you're looking to build a mansion, if you want to renovate your kitchen, if you want to add a second story to your home, please contact myself and then I will link you to Usfiso Madondo and he can build for you. I'm going to try and make sure that I can find some link. I may not post it in the description today, but moving forward, I'm going to try and find a link to some of the work that he's done so you can see his portfolio of evidence. He's constantly working. You can constantly find him on site and then connect with him. I'm going to try and see if I can put on more of my friends that are doing amazing work because they support me in various ways, financially, opening opportunities for me, letting me use their homes, letting me use their businesses, and obviously the ones that do catering sometimes feed me as well. Just want to send a shout out to Janine Makoko as well, who has a clothing business called Mustard Seed. I'm going to try and find her Instagram handle and post it below as well. Nonhlanhla Manganyi, Sfiso Madondo, Janine Mokoko as well. They all do amazing work and they are close friends of mine. I just want to highlight this morning that President Cyril Ramaphosa has withdrawn the amendments to the ministerial handbook. Very sneakily in April and May, Cyril Ramaphosa went and he removed the limits on ministers getting benefits of water and electricity. Before, I think the cap was 5,000 Rand, that a minister could spend up to 5,000 Rand of water and electricity, and in anything beyond that, they would have to pay out of pocket. But now he removed that cap, which means it was limitless. And then he increased their vehicle allowance from 700,000 to 800,000 Rand. The Democratic Alliance has complained about this in Parliament, and since then, Cyril Ramaphosa has revoked those amendments. It seems, as people have alluded before, that Cyril does listen to the DA, and a lot of people have said that he's a DA president. And that's why John Steenhuisen, the leader of the Democratic Alliance, and other DA people have said they don't mind working with Cyril Ramaphosa. It's other ANC members they don't appreciate working with. So it seems Cyril listens to the DA. I could even joke and say, if you want Cyril to do something, try and ask the DA to ask Cyril to get that thing done. Minister Mondli Gungubele was quoted yesterday stating that he pays 10,000 Rand in medical aid. And one of the questions that he was asked, because he was complaining that 10,000 Rand a month for medical aid for him is expensive, he was asked, why do you not use public healthcare? And he laughed. He laughed. A bitter pain for ordinary South Africans who pay tax, for ordinary South Africans who have to use public healthcare. I've said before when I was venting that your politicians are entrusted to look over public healthcare, are entrusted to look over public schooling, yet they send their kids to private schools and they use private healthcare. At some point, sooner rather than later, we need to force politicians, especially parliamentarians, and even public servants, that if you're working for public schooling, if you're working for public healthcare, if you're working in a government department, you should not be allowed to use private services. Yes, it's your life, it's your prerogative, we have a constitution, but the reality is there is a direct conflict of interest. You are a nurse working in public healthcare, but your children go to private healthcare. What is the incentive for you to give a top-notch service? Whereas if you know that your children use the same facilities, if you know that your kids have to go to the same schools where you are a teacher, you will inevitably raise the standard. So it's fundamentally important that I think we scrap the opportunity or the option for politicians and public servants to use private services in their regard. I was asked recently if I agree with the idea of Eskom being privatized. and I have said this before, under his presidency, Thabo Mbeki, whose deputy president was Jacob Zuma, tried to privatize Eskom and failed. And it was at that time that they got the reports saying that the power stations are not being maintained adequately and that they have to increase capacity in the power stations, and they didn't implement that. Thabo Mbeki's presidency failed to implement that, and 15 years later, we've got load shedding now. We're at stage 2, kicked off last week, and then as of 5:30 this morning, we just found out that we've gone to stage 4 because apparently some generators, etc., have been damaged or are malfunctioning. But it came out also last week that outside of independent power producers, your government is going to be giving work to these other power producers who didn't go through the processes. Some of them funded by the Rockefellers in America, some of them funded by a subsidiary of the World Bank, which means Cyril Ramaphosa, Pravin Gordhan, and the government that you guys have is working in collaboration with foreign entities for issues at Eskom that the ex-CEO Matsila Koko and Brian Molefe have said they can be solved because South Africa has enough capacity. But anyways, they asked if I think it should be privatized. 15 years later, we've got load shedding. Andre Tareta, the CEO, Pravin, Gwede Mantashe, they claim there's sabotage at Eskom. But on the other hand, there are people that are making a killing, giving diesel to the generators at Eskom. Patrice Motsepe, as I've said, is a beneficiary of 12 of the 25 independent power contracts licenses that have been handed out by his brother-in-law, Jeff Radebe. My response was this: I do not trust the ANC government with state-owned enterprises. They have proven that they are struggling, whether it's because they now have to deal with a mass, bigger black community versus the apartheid government, which was dealing with a smaller community, or it might be that really their corruption is that bad or their mismanagement is so poor. But the ANC government has failed. They've sold SAA Pravin Gordhan, that's currently under investigation. The SAPC is currently constantly running at a loss and needs to be bailed out. They have decimated our railway system at Transnet. Railway was an important part of the economy, and they've given birth to a huge truck economy, which also destroys our roads and leads to a lot of the potholes, but has enriched a lot of politically connected people. They want to have the National Health Insurance, NHI, they want it to be implemented, but if you look at public healthcare, they haven't proven that they're doing a good job. Our public healthcare is horrible. Our public schooling keeps going backwards. So I do not want the ANC government to run state-owned enterprises. But in the same breath, I do not trust the private sector. The private sector is profit-driven. It is run by an elite class, which was previously white, but has included a lot of black people today. Your Saki Zomas, your Robert Gumedes, your Cyril Ramaphosas, your Patrice Motsepes, you know, the Motsepe ladies, the Daphne Nkosis of this world. So the private sector in itself is also not the greatest. They may provide a great service, but it is normally very expensive and unaffordable to the poorest of the poor. If you look at, as I've just given you an example, that your politicians use private schooling for their kids and private healthcare for themselves and their families, and they also use private security, by their way, around their homes, etc. And some of them are being funded by the same government and tax. They're being funded to have generators and alternative energy. We maybe need to have a mix. And independent power producers are meant to be that mix, but I think it needs to be more split. It can't come from government. What do I mean? If we are going to have public schooling, of which 67% of the population goes to no-fee schools, and then maybe there's like a 5%, if not less, of the population that uses private schooling. The bulk, the vast majority of the population uses public schooling. And by the way, Afrikaans schools are almost all public schools. There are very, very few private Afrikaans schools outside of Kuro. I know there's Help Mekar in Johannesburg, but there are very few private Afrikaans schools. The amazing white Afrikaans schools, you know, those are government schools. The majority use public schooling. 90% of the population uses public healthcare. 10% has actually got medical aid, and this includes your politicians, your public school teachers, your public healthcare nurses and doctors, etc. But we have those splits. And I'm saying, why can't Eskom or Energy have the same? And we say something like 80%, 90% of the population will use a public Eskom, which is cheap, maybe even free, that is then run by the government. Whichever government it may be, it could be the corrupt ANC, it's fine. But then there's a 10% or a 20% which is freely allowed to generate their own energy and electricity, even if it's expensive, even if it's at a premium. So that for people that have the money and the affordability, they will know that their power is constantly on because they pay for private energy. In the same way, we've got the SABC, which is public generally, even though we're meant to pay TV license. You've also got MultiChoice and DSTV, which is private. And you can opt into that. You don't have to watch SABC. You can watch DSTV programs. So I fundamentally think Eskom should have that same mix, or at least not Eskom, energy, electricity should have the same mix. People should be allowed to generate electricity and power on their own independently. And then those that can afford it should be able to plug onto those people. And those that can't can then plug onto an Eskom or any other government regulated at a large scale for the poorest of the poor. But I just want to emphasize, your president, your deputy president, Diti Mabuza, your cabinet ministers, your members of parliament, other provincial and local politicians, your public servants, teachers, police officers, traffic officers, nurses, doctors, administrators, etc. All of those people need to be forced to not be able to use private healthcare, to not use private schooling, and to not even use private security. Because if they have an incentive to improve these spaces will get better. Your ministers who currently enjoy no load shedding need to be taken off, and they need to suffer like the rest of us so that they have an incentive to do something about this thing. Because when we are being load shed, they are enjoying endless electricity at our expense, and there's no incentive for them to prioritize the work that they need to do. Very disappointed by Minister Mondli Gungubele, and I hope he will make out a statement and apologize for the disrespect and the spitting in the faces of ordinary South Africans in saying that he has to pay 10,000 rand medical aid. And when he was asked to use public health care that him and his colleagues are meant to oversee, he laughed, thinking that it's a fat joke for him to use public health care that the rest of us have to use. I think that's all I want to cover this morning. I will catch up with you guys soon, and I hope that you'll have a great day. Again, Kushinda Caterers, I'm going to drop the websites at the bottom. Jombela Property with Usfiso Madondo. If you would like to build something, renovate something in your home, or even in your office space, I'll drop you my email address. You can contact me and I'll link you with Usfiso. And then Janine Mokoko as well, who does bespoke clothing, particularly with African designs for mustard seed clothing. Catch up with you guys soon. Pin you all the black pen. I'm out.